At some point in your life, maybe late at night, maybe when you couldn't sleep, you've probably reached for your phone not to scroll, but to feel better. You didn't want advice. You didn't want motivation. You just wanted the noise in your head to stop. Now imagine this. While you're typing that message or searching for something, your phone isn't just listening to what you say or type. It's analyzing how you say it or how you type it. Your typing speed, your pauses, your word choices, your voice, your behavior over weeks. Before you've even admitted you're struggling, an algorithm has already formed an opinion about your mental state. We are in the middle of a mental health crisis, not just because there aren't enough therapists, but because for the first time in history, machines are stepping into the most intimate conversations humans have ever had. So the question isn't just whether AI can help your mind. The real question is, what happens when your mind becomes data? For most of human history, your inner life was invisible. Your fears existed only in your head. Your worst thoughts disappeared the moment you stopped thinking them. That's no longer true. Today, distress leaves fingerprints. And once something leaves data, it stops being private by default. Welcome to Frontal Neuron. Today, we're exploring the AI revolution in mental health, where help, surveillance, healing, and control all start to blur together. Most people think AI therapy starts when you open an app and start talking. It doesn't. It starts days earlier, when you hesitate before replying to a text and your typing slows down. When late-night phone checks increase and your voice sounds just a little flatter than usual. In 2025, AI mental health tools fall into two main categories. The first is conversational AI. Apps like Weiser or Wobot aren't just scripted chatbots anymore. They use large language models trained on therapeutic frameworks like CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy. They don't just respond to what you say. They infer what you might be avoiding. If you mention stress 3 times in a week, the system notices. If your language becomes more rigid, more negative, more absolute, it notices. Not because it understands you, but because it's learned the statistical shape of distress. Hear why this feels so compelling. Humans are terrible at noticing slow change. We adapt to stress. We normalize exhaustion. We explain away emotional drift. AI doesn't do that. It doesn't get used to you declining. And that's powerful because sometimes the most dangerous mental health changes are the quiet ones. The second category is more controversial and far more powerful. It's called digital phenotyping. This isn't experimental. Versions of this are already being used in healthcare systems, insurance risk models, and workplace wellness programs. Your phone becomes a psychological sensor. It tracks how fast you type, how often you scroll, when you stop replying to people. If your messages get shorter, if your sleep schedule drifts, if your online behavior spikes at 3 a.m. An AI system may flag that as an early signal of depression or mania, sometimes weeks before you would ever describe yourself that way. And here's the uncomfortable part. Once a system can detect a pattern, it doesn't just observe it. It expects it. Which means your future mental state isn't just felt by you, it's modeled. For some people, that means help arrives earlier than ever. For others, it means their worst moments are anticipated before they're understood. Imagine 2 timelines. In one, a person notices something is wrong after months of feeling off. In the other, a system flags subtle changes in week 3. Same person, same outcome. very different moment of intervention. Up to this point, AI in mental health is mostly predictive. It watches patterns. It estimates risk. It quietly suggests what might be happening. But teletherapy is where prediction turns into interpretation. In modern teletherapy sessions, AI doesn't just sit in the background. It listens. Platforms like Kintsugi analyze your voice in real time, your pitch, cadence, pauses, and microtremors. You might say, "I'm fine." The system hears elevated stress markers. This isn't a diagnosis. It's an interpretation. A statistical opinion layered on top of your words. Most of us assume interpretation only happens when someone speaks. But in digital systems, interpretation happens constantly, even when no one says anything. Silence becomes a signal. Hesitation becomes a data point. And this is where things subtly change. Because once an interpretation exists, it influences decisions. The therapist may lean in harder. They may redirect the conversation. They may document risk that you don't feel ready to name. Not because you said something wrong, but because the system suggested something underneath what you said. At this point, the AI isn't just predicting your mental state. It's shaping how you are perceived. And perception doesn't just affect treatment. It affects how cautiously you're spoken to, how quickly risk is escalated, how your future interactions are framed. And perception in healthcare carries consequences. A flagged session can mean closer monitoring. It can affect treatment plans. In some systems, it can even trigger follow-ups you didn't ask for. And here's the tension. The AI might be right, but it might also be wrong. And unlike a human misunderstanding, an algorithmic judgment leaves a trail, and AI will follow it. So now the question is whether AI can notice what you're feeling. It's what happens once that feeling is recorded, interpreted, and acted upon. This is where things get uncomfortable. Because AI doesn't fail loudly, it fails quietly. Imagine this scenario. A person is struggling, not enough to call a hotline, not enough to tell anyone, but enough to open an AI mental health app at 1 a.m. The model has been trained mostly on data from people who don't look like them, don't live like them, and don't experience the world the same way. The advice sounds reasonable, calm, neutral. But it's wrong. Who is responsible in that moment? The developer who wrote the model, the company that deployed it, the hospital that integrated it, or the person who trusted it when they were most vulnerable? There is no clear answer, and that's the problem. Now let's talk about privacy, because mental health data isn't like location data or shopping history. This is data about your fears, your insecurities, your impulses, your weakest moments. Unlike physical health data, mental health data predicts behavior. It suggests what you might do under stress, how you might react under pressure, where you might break. That makes it incredibly useful and incredibly dangerous. In 2025, this is the most valuable data on Earth. If an AI mental health tool is free, you need to ask a hard question. Who benefits from knowing how and when you break down? Because once your emotional patterns are stored, analyzed, and monetized, they don't just describe you. They predict you. And prediction is power. And power is very, very easy to abuse. Power doesn't always show up as abuse. Sometimes it shows up as quiet influence. Who gets extra monitoring? Who gets flagged as high risk? Who gets trusted less but without being told? So, can AI actually help heal the human mind? The honest answer is yes, and that's exactly why we need to be careful. The data is real. In controlled settings, AI-assisted mental health tools are showing significant reductions in reported anxiety and depression. They're faster. They're cheaper. They don't have wait lists. And for millions of people who would otherwise get no help at all, that matters. But effectiveness isn't the same thing as understanding. AI doesn't know why you're hurting. It knows patterns. It can tell that your sleep is broken and your language has darkened, but it can't know that it started after a conversation you haven't told anyone about yet. Probabilities. Correlations between words, pauses, behaviors, and outcomes. It doesn't share your history. It doesn't sit with uncertainty. It doesn't carry the weight of lived experience. And that distinction matters because mental health isn't just about symptom reduction. It's about agency. It's about being able to say, "This is who I am, not just what your model predicts." This gives philosophical weight without drifting. It's about meaning. It's about being seen, not just assessed. And which is why at Full Frontal Neuron, we don't see AI as a replacement for human care. We see it as a force multiplier, a triage tool, a support system between sessions, a way to lower the barrier to asking for help. But the moment we allow algorithms to quietly replace human judgment, rather than assist it, we risk building a system that treats distress as a data problem instead of a human one. The future of mental health won't be decided by whether AI works. It already does. It will be decided by who controls it, how transparently it's used, and whether we're willing to draw boundaries before they're crossed. Because once technology becomes good enough to listen to our minds, the hardest question isn't whether it should help us. It's whether it will still know when to step back. Before you go, I want you to think about something and answer honestly. If you were at your lowest point, would you rather talk to a human who might misunderstand you, or an AI that understands your patterns but not your story? That choice is going to define the future of mental health. Tell me which one you'd choose and why. Not hypothetically, personally. If you want more deep dives into how technology is reshaping the human mind, subscribe to Full Frontal Neuron. Because the next question we're asking is even harder. What happens when AI gets it wrong and no one notices?